Well, now we're going to be joined by Harry Wilkinson, who's head of policy at Net Zero Watch. Harry, what do you make of the ongoing situation in Ukraine? And tell us, give us a broad picture. What does this mean for the UK's cost of living?
Good morning. Well, I think it's certainly the right thing to do for the government to be saying that they don't want to be importing Russian oil and gas anymore. But I think what that means for consumers is that unless we find alternative supplies, prices will go up. And we've heard the Prime Minister say that the United States, Canada, other suppliers should be increasing output. So what I find is completely extraordinary is that we would be ignoring a potentially large source of our own supply, which is shale gas, when we're telling other countries that they should be increasing their output. So it's vitally important that we can do this at home so that we can encourage other countries to do it elsewhere, because otherwise we consumers will just continue to see these rising prices and inflation is going up across the board. Consumers are really suffering. And just to come in on that point about the environmental levies, it's not a particularly progressive way to fund these levies, that it comes from everyone's energy bills. That's going disproportionately on poorer people. And if that was moved on to general taxation, for example, I think we would see a more equitable funding of those green levies. So that should be something that the government is moving forward with right away.
So, Harry, I want to come back to you there on shale gas, on fracking. This is something that the government sort of rejected after some early surveys. But let's say there was a decision made today to continue exploratory works. How long would it be until those gas extraction plants would be kind of up and running and we'd actually see that in the UK system?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. I think the actual physical activity of drilling the wells could happen in the space of months, potentially a year. What's taking all the time is all the regulatory hurdles. And there's various sorts of planning permission that you need. There's various health and safety regulations that have to be met. So I think it's whether we can actually provide a framework in which the industry can move forward. One striking thing that I was able to see recently was a presentation about shale gas in the House of Commons. And what it was revealed was that actually it took up to 43 months for shale gas wells to be approved in the UK, compared to more like just a few months in the United States. So what they have is a system in America where they can have concurrent approvals on the various environmental and planning permits that they need, so that all of those eventually come in much quicker. Whereas in the UK, we see it sort of lined up one by one. So any potential shale gas developer has to get all of these approvals, and they have to wait for one to happen, and then the next, and then the next. So we see a very long approvals process, and all of that time costs money. And that's time that we don't have right now. We need a system in which a reasonable time period is given to shale gas developers to develop and permit these wells. Otherwise, it's not going to be cost effective if developers are just stuck in this sort of quagmire in which they can't move forward.
So it looks as though if we were to pursue shale gas, that would be probably a more sort of medium-term project. But people clearly are very worried about cost of living now and in the sort of weeks and months to come. Harry, if you had one ask of government to try and get those prices down and relieve cost of living pressures, what would it be?
Well, I think the one thing they could do right away is remove the VAT and remove those green levies onto general taxation. That's the thing they could do right away. But in the sort of medium term, I think we have to be looking at shale, we have to be looking at nuclear, we have to be looking at those kind of reliable technologies that can provide baseload power. Because at the moment, we're relying on a single technology, gas, to provide that baseload power, the vast majority of our baseload power. And that's just leaving us increasingly exposed.
Mm-hmm.